On this week's FPL Happy Hour. See that clip?
I live in the real world, not the fantasy
That's
world.
the one.
Yeah, there it is.
That's the one. There it is. It was Blackbox. I knew it was. Hello and welcome to the 17th episode of our podcast FPL Happy Hour with me, Sham, otherwise known as FPL 2 Guys 1 Cup on Twitter.
And myself, Rob, otherwise known as FPL Panda.
Rob, how are you?
Really good. Excited by the person that we've got waiting in the background.
Indeed.
So rather than us talk about our game week, shall we just crack on and get him in?
Well, that's it. So, Rob, on tonight's episode, we have an elite guest, or as some would say, and including me, the GOAT of FPL. I remember watching this man week after week, years ago on the Scoutcast and thinking, wow, this guy is unreal. How does he do it? An FPL rap sheet bigger than the Bible. He is the founder of the Fantasy Football Scout, and this is his 15th season playing. His ranks include 9 top 5k finishes, 4 top 1k finishes, and a best rank of 42 in the world. And he's currently in the top 3k this year. He's now the co-host of the extremely popular FPL Blackbox with 15,000 subscribers on YouTube and regularly hitting 20,000 views every week. I myself watch it every week and I'm a massive fan. And if that wasn't all, he's now partnered with Fantasy Football Fest, a new FPL live event starting later this year, which hopefully he will tell us more about this evening. Please welcome the FPL GOAT, Mark Sutherns. Mark, how are you?
Blimey, after that intro, I've got a lot to live up to. Thanks, Sam. You did say your intros are legendary, and that was pretty good. I'm kind of blushing. Yeah, I'm not the FBL GOAT. Don't start calling me that. But yeah,
I'll get my trumpet out again. I'll get the trumpet out again.
No, it's very, very kind of you to have me on, and I'm pleased to be. I'm doing more pods and streams this year, and I'm glad I can come on and chat to you guys because I just love chatting FPL, as you're about to find out. I'm sure you're going to shut me up now.
Nice, we're honoured, mate. We're really thankful for having you on. So I guess tonight, so we put out a post on Twitter for Q&A for you. A lot of people want to get to know you more and what you're up to at the moment, and we want to get to know, how you manage your FPL team, and then also we've got towards the end of the pod, we've got some questions about the upcoming game weeks. So let's do some getting to know you questions first, just some general ones, and then we'll go on to a bit of FPL. Sure. So, what is your greatest footballing memory?
Blimey. Well,
Can be FPL or otherwise.
It's one of the ones that sticks in my mind. I'm a Forest fan, so one that sticks in my mind is coming back from Scouts for the 1980 European Cup final and watching. I remember eating cola bottles out of my Cub Scout hat because they had a tuck shop at Cubs, and always you buy them at the end and you take them home, and I used to put them in my cap and then eat them on the way home. But this time I saved them because I knew the European Cup final was on that night. Got back, sat in front of the telly eating my cola bottles, and I just remember Robertson scoring the goal, which was the winning goal. Always remember that. I always remember that and look back and think I wish I'd have appreciated it more, but I was too young really to know the grandeur of that achievement. Obviously, it was the second year they won it as well. I don't remember the Malmo game when Francis is scoring at all. So that's kind of like one of my earliest football memories. I think going back, I've seen some incredible matches live. I always remember my best friend at school was a QPR fan, and he took me to a lot of QPR matches because he had a spare season ticket. I remember watching a 5-5 draw between QPR and Newcastle, and Chris Waddle was playing for Newcastle. It was on QPR's plastic pitch, and Waddle got a hat trick. And Waddle's that day was like probably still the best performance many player I've ever seen live. Ridiculous. He scored a ridiculous 45-yard curling effort on that plastic pitch. If you remember the plastic pitch, the ball really sat up, and he just caught. I was right behind the ball when he caught it, and I always remember that match. And Terry Venables, Alan Mallory was manager at QPR, I think, and he came out, and after the result, because they were 4-1 down at half time and QPR came back and drew 5-5.
Wow.
Mallory, I think, came out and clapped to the fans, and it was like ridiculous. And I don't know if I'll ever see a match like that again. So those two things live in my mind. As a Forest fan, you have to go back that far for big memories, really. Yeah, it's kind of difficult.
And then, what's your greatest FPL memory?
Wow, that's really tricky, because there's
Or
always
one of the...
one or two a season. I mean, this season it takes some beating, to be honest. This one, it may well be my best memory ever. Was the Grealish haul against Liverpool, because it was, I think it was week 3 or 4, and I'd noticed that FPL General Mark, who is someone I greatly admire, touted this match of the day challenge thing that he does, and it was one of the things that he was going to do more of. And I remember listening to the 59th minute and thinking, oh, I'd quite like to give that a go. And I thought to myself, well, I'll never be able to do it. And then it got to that game week, and I think there was some reason why it was easy, because Villa were the only game on, and then there was a United game after that. Can't remember who they were playing, but that had a load of goals in it as
Tottenham.
well. That's it. Yeah, that was a ridiculous, bizarre result as well. So I basically decided I had Grealish because I held on to him, and it was a punt the week before and it didn't come in. I think they had Fulham away and he did all right, and he didn't really explode, but I held on to him for the next game, even though I wanted to get Barnes, but I decided not to. And so I did the match of the day challenge. So I didn't watch the matches, and I didn't go on Twitter, and I didn't know the scores.
Wow.
And then at like half 10 at night, I pressed play on the Skybox and started watching. And I was like, obviously everyone knew this, and everyone was off Twitter and had gone to bed. And I was like, as this match was going on, I was like, what the hell is going on here? And then like Grealish, I think, got an assist. I think it was 4-1, and Grealish had just got one assist. And it was half time, and I was thinking, bloody hell, I'm a bit gutted that Grealish has only got one assist.
Because he's not going to score anymore, are they? That's
well, that's what I thought. I thought, well, that's it, 4-1. Christ, that's bizarre enough. I'm a bit unfortunate to only get an assist, and I thought I'd get a bonus point or two, because he set up loads of chances. I think Barkley missed a couple of sitters on the end of his, and then second half he just went absolutely crazy. And I think did he get 2 assists and a hat trick? Something ridiculous.
2 goals and 2 assists or something.
2 goals and 2 assists and maximum bonus. Yeah, it was 25 points, I think. And everyone had gone to bed. So basically, it was like 12:30 at night. I've just seen the most ridiculous match I've ever seen, and my player, who was a massive differential, get 25 points, and I was just like totally wired. I think I went up to my girlfriend and said,
"You just wanted to talk to everyone."
Literally, yeah, I just wanted.
I just need to talk to someone about this.
You know, I was watching that match, and my player, he got 25 points. She was like, oh. So I then went on Twitter and said, oh, I did a few tweets, but no one was up, and I was like, but it was probably for the best, because I don't like it when people go on Twitter and kind of go on about their successes. But to be honest, if I was watching that game live and my player, and it was Grealish, got 25 points, I think I would have been on Twitter, not gloating, but certainly pointing out the fact that I had him in my team. So I was quite pleased that I didn't watch it live. But I don't think I can remember anything as bizarre and as fantastical as that in terms of my team.
I mean, just thinking back about that game, like, you forget that Liverpool were pretty much at full strength that night. Like,
yeah, I had Salah as well. He got a couple, didn't he?
Yeah, he got a couple of goals, but it was like 2 or 3 weeks before like the injuries started to roll in for them, and then they really started to struggle. But yeah, I think you could, at that moment, it was a big warning sign for the rest of the season for Liverpool. And then the fact that Van Dijk then got injured, and then all the other injuries that occurred, and it kind of snowballed a bit. Like the warning signs were there when they were at full strength.
And I didn't take any notice because I doubled up in their defence for about 6 weeks after that. I had Robertson. I think I had Robertson and Trent for 6 weeks after, and I was like, no, I'm sticking to it. I think
so did James and Sudge from Planet
they
FPL.
did. James definitely did, because I think James held on longer than me. And I remember listening to James, because I listened to Planet FPL was one of the pods I listened to. And I was like, yeah, you stick it to your guns, James. And it was I think we were both talking each other into it. We just held on to it for ages. So, yeah, it was. But that was, what a crazy night that was. And just the circumstances of not seeing that result, and then it turning out to be the scoreline it was with the points that were on offer. And yeah, it's mad.
Rob, should we look at how all 3 of us did for last game week before we go into some more questions?
Yep. So it's always the guest first, or
Right.
the highest ranked of us all first.
Okay. Well, I got some. I decided to let my subs do their thing this week because I missed the Dallas Hall against City. He was my third sub. So I thought to myself, well, to be honest, Holding and Dallas could do all right. So I'm not going to take a hit. I knew Alonso and Rafinha probably weren't going to turn up and I'd need them both. But I thought, well, I don't know, they might do all right. And they did. So that kind of paid off. Tonight, I was going to do Alonso to Castagna for a hit. And tonight, for that to hurt me, Castagna would have had to have got 10 points. And I think he got 9, didn't he? So I just about got away with that. So I was quite happy. So in the end, with the bench points, I got 55, I think. No, 58. 58 with the bench points with Nacho's bonus to go in.
What's your rank now?
So that's a green arrow. According to the masterful Ragaboli and his wonderful site, I'm 2,253 now.
Wow.
So I want to come in the top 1K. That's the target. So I'm still on target.
I was going to ask you actually what your target was.
Yeah, I want to get a 3-figure finish is what I said at the start of Blackbox, thinking that might be out of reach. And at one point when I was 2.4 million with like 10 weeks gone, it looked well out of reach, but both Az and I have pulled it around second half, and hopefully I can make it into the top 1K. I feel
Az has had a very similar season to me. We've always been around the same sort of mark, and then we both wildcarded in 31 and then had a bigger green arrow, a very similar team to me. I think he's sitting at about 100k now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's I think he's almost in the top, and this week he went as a differential captain. He went with Trent instead of Kelechi. I don't know why he did that. I'm sure he's going to tell us on Thursday a bit more. But had he gone with Nacho, I think he would have been into the 100k maybe. But I think he's got another green arrow, just about. So he's done very well. I mean, he's been frighteningly consistent with the green arrows. He wasn't having massive weeks, but then about 4 or 5 weeks ago, it just clicked and he had 2 in a short space of time, and that bumped him up from where he was around the million mark to suddenly around 200,000, and he's just grinding down the ranks from there, which is kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, but the much lower end.
Yeah, but it's kind of, once you get into the top 10k, you've got to have some brilliant game weeks to get higher, or some bloody awful game weeks to get a disaster. Yeah. So as long as I keep it somewhere in the middle and then have 1 or 2 good ones, then I think I've got a chance of pushing up. But yeah, it's a bit of a fine art, really, knowing when to push and when to be a bit more conservative. So it's tricky.
We're going to ask you a bit about that later as well.
Yeah.
Right, Rob, do you want to go for your team?
Well, I got Leno, Sanchez. I think I made the right decision by going Sanchez over Leno, especially after Leno got his OG. But then I wasn't expecting Sheffield United to score. They score like once every 6 weeks or something, and this was the time. But I mean, I can't complain. I got a 10-pointer off him last week. The -4 worked out where I took out Phillips and Son for Maddison and Castagna, only because Castagna's come out with a 9-pointer this evening. Clean sheets for Shaw and Rudiger. I don't know whether I don't know how my feelings were about that Burnley v Wolves game on Sunday afternoon. Absolutely incredible. Burnley don't score more than like twice, and they go and bang 4 past Wolves.
And I'll tell you what, you've got Vidra on your bench there, have you, Rob?
Yeah.
That could have got really messy for you.
It could have gone horribly wrong. We had a goal disallowed the start of the second half. I couldn't believe it. Suddenly, Burnley, out of all people, playing like free-flowing attacking football.
But they've been like that the last few weeks.
Yeah,
that's why I called Vidra. Remember on that wild card, and I was like, I really like Vidra because Burnley are playing really differently now. They're playing a lot more free flow, and you're like, oh no, they're not. I'm not going to start him. Like, I genuinely think Vidra is a good pick.
Yeah,
I know he didn't return, but I think he's a good
for his
pick.
Value. I mean, my concern, and it's still my concern with Vidra, is whether he starts. He didn't start at the weekend. Didn't start last week. So
he did start on the weekend.
Did he start on Sunday?
He started against Wolves. Yeah. Him and Wood have got like 9 goals in 6 now, I think, between the two of them.
But yeah, I mean, think my differential team this week, I brought in Chris Wood, which I was happy with that. But anyway, Jota, disappointing. He could have hauled. Salah could have hauled. Although I'm not sure I would have liked a Salah haul, seeing the number of people that captained him. And I went for the gamble on Bruno, which didn't work out. I was really disappointed with the United performance as a whole against Leeds. I think it was a case of turn up to Ellen Road, don't let anyone get injured, get a point, go home. I think that's how United turned up, when I would have liked them to stick one into Leeds. That's my nice way of saying it. And Lingard, disappointing, although probably wasn't expecting much out of him against Chelsea. Let's be honest, Chelsea have been a lot stronger defensively. West Ham, though, I mean, you're a West Ham fan, Sham, and you'd say, what, for 20 to 25 minutes of that game, you could have easily got something out of the game. But then
we should have been 2-0 down. Werner's miss was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that? He was like through on goal. I don't know how he's. Yeah. I don't know how he didn't score that.
And then, I mean, we could sit here and pod about the Balbuena red card all evening. But
stupid.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. And then Iheanacho this evening. Well, what a strike for the winner. But he's come in and been a bit of a revelation. He took his chance when Vardy got injured. He's come in, he started scoring goals, and it looks like him and Vardy actually play off each other quite well.
I'd just like to say we called it right from the beginning.
Yeah, we
did. I called it right from the beginning. Right from the beginning. Before everyone got him in his team.
We do talk over these things.
Yeah,
though.
We do talk over these things. Yeah.
I didn't tell you it was a stupid idea.
No.
But yeah, so I mean, it's not a great week, but it's not a bad week. It's a green arrow at the moment on livefpl.net. Currently at 72.2k, up from 82. So it's a 10k green arrow. The top 50k, which is the target I set when we started the pod, is in sight. So let's try and get that, and then try and push further.
It's a funny week though, isn't it? I mean, there was blanks, right? So I look at it and go, if you end up with a green arrow out of this, it's a decent result, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's especially with the way that the Spurs fixtures fall either side of the blank. Like they had the double, they had the blank, and then they've got a good fixture next week, and it's just I was very much on the fence about taking Son out, but I really wanted to attack the Leicester versus Palace game, and I felt that I could then maybe look at taking Bruno out next week for Son, which is probably going to be my most likely move at the moment, to then be able to cover Spurs and Leicester next week, because they've both got great fixtures.
Right, should go on to my team. So before I go on to my team, you mentioned about your target being 50k when we started the pod. Both of our ranks was, when we started the pod, mine was like 1.4 million and yours was like 800,000. That was in game week 18. And I'm now only 7 points behind you, and I'm on 83k. Right. So I think both of us have done really well from 1.4 million in game week 18 to now in 33, we're in the top 100k. It's the first game week I'm in the top 100k, so I'm well pleased. I took a gamble on Kelechi Iheanacho as captain. I knew everyone was going Salah, and I think I got away with it. Like, he got a 9-pointer, but that could have been at least a 20-pointer. They should have scored at least like 3 goals. I don't know how they didn't. But think I finished on 66 points, something like that, I think, including Castagna. So my moves this week were Castagna in and Greenwood in. So I haven't got Son for next week, but I'm hoping. I don't think he was teetering on a price decrease, but now he's gone back up this week, so he's like 9.5, and I was hoping I'd get him for 9.4. So because I might do Greenwood back to Son, but I'm 0.1 short, so I'm not going to be able to do that for this week, which is annoying. But yeah, really pleased with overall 83k, only 7 points behind you, so it's game on for the rest of the season now.
Game on, yeah.
Game on.
Yeah, I mean, even 3 or 4 game weeks ago, you were a long way behind, and my green arrows have got a lot smaller as we've gone through. And then you've had some. I mean, you've taken a few gambles and they've paid off. So yeah, another cracking gamble on Ian Atro this week.
Yeah. Right. So that's our game week. So Mark, back to you. We've got some questions for you now. So you got into Scout a long time ago. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about how you got into Scout and what it was like?
Yeah, I mean, it was really just getting back into fantasy football again. When I I played years ago with a Telegraph game in the paper, and then had this hiatus. I didn't play after that. I got my job in the video games industry. That was my other passion. Music, video games, and fantasy football are basically my passion. So I'd moved on to video games, and I think with fantasy football in those days, you needed to have rivals to be in a mini league with. It wasn't all about overall rank then. It was about finding friends and playing it with friends. And I kind of, the friends I used to play fantasy football with have moved on, and we moved away. And then when I started my new job, I met Granville, who I then went on to form the Scout cast with, and he kind of got me back into fantasy football again because he just annoyed me so much and I had to beat him. So I started playing, and then we had that rivalry, and it was just one Christmas. I thought, well, I'm doing lots of research in order to try and beat Granville, so why don't I used to do websites back in the old days, HTML, before even like style sheets came in and stuff, right? Really early, clunky HTML. And I just thought, well, I'm going to try and sharpen up my skills and build a website, and I'll do it about fantasy football because I'm doing lots of research. Might as well publish some articles, get it out there, and see what happens. Everyone was kind of doing blogs back then. It was kind of like the MySpace era, and I just put it out there, and people started coming, and then I did more with it. I developed it further. I put things like the ticker in there, which are now, everyone's got tickers going on. We put that in there, and then, I was doing regular articles. The Scout Pick started. I started the podcast with Granville, so that was like one of the first kind of fantasy football podcasts. And then, it got more serious, and I got these Americans came over one year and said, "We want to buy it off you," and they offered me money for it. And I was like, at that point, I was like, "Oh, this is getting very real now." So I got in touch with my friend Chris at the time, who I knew from my old publishing days when I was a journalist. He'd set up his own publishing business, so I knew that he could give me some advice about it. He knew about websites. He saw the traffic and he said, "Well, don't sell it to them, sell it to me instead." So he gave me some money. He came on board. We formed a business. It wasn't even a limited company until Chris came in, and then we launched the members area, and then it goes on from there. It was just a big success, and we did really well with it, and the site just grew. We started hiring people, and it became much bigger than I ever imagined. And then a few years back, we worked with the Premier League for a while, and that we got bigger involvement in the Premier League. I was writing articles for them full time, and it just got a bit much for me. I wasn't really seeing enough of my kids, wasn't seeing enough of my family overall, and health-wise, I had some problems, some stress and anxiety of being involved with it, and I just decided to get out. I wasn't enjoying it as much as I was, and so it felt right. Went back to my day job, and now I just do FPL for fun again, which is really good. But I've got one or two ventures, as I'm sure we'll touch on later, that are getting me gradually back into things. But I won't go back to how I was on Scout. That was full on, and it just didn't do me any good in the end.
Nice. Well, what was it like doing something like, the Scoutcast and podcast back 10 years ago or 8 years ago when you did it? Because it's not like it is now. Now, kind of everyone has a podcast and everyone's talking about FPL, and there's so many out there. Whereas you were like one of the first. So what was it like doing that?
It was a bit. I mean, we didn't really have anything to kind of any template to copy. I mean, I'd listened to some of the American NFL style pods. So they were out there. So, like what I did with Scout, with the website, I kind of looked at the American model and used that as a guide to what we could do with Premier League football and fantasy. And I did the same with the pods. I kind of listened to the kind of stuff that they did and just, adapted that. But really, it was more about me and Granville and the fact that we were kind of arguing all the time, and he was very opinionated, and I was as well. So we just thought, look, well, obviously there was like Baddiel and Skinner rather, who did the fantasy football thing, and that was kind of informal, kind of casual. It wasn't really, they didn't really go into detail about fantasy football. So we wanted to capture some of that, the two mates on a sofa, but we also wanted to be a bit more, give advice and have a bit more, have some stats in there and stuff. So I think it worked really well in those days, and it's difficult, like you guys have got a good chemistry, but you've got to find that chemistry with people, and then that sometimes just carries you. You don't need to be worried necessarily about the amount of research you do and the content. You just get by with that spark you've got between the two of you, and that's what Granville and I had. And I think that kind of it built from there. And then even the Scoutcast became more professional, if you like, as Scout grew into being a business.
Okay. And then so now you do Blackbox with Az. Obviously, that's just kind of like as a fun thing. How did that come about, and how are you finding that?
Well, it just came about because I'd got better. I'd managed to figure out what my condition was after having been ill for about 1.5 years, and I'd got some. I was on medication that was helping me with that, so I'd recovered, and I was kind of ready to get back into the scene at that point. I felt like I could, do some extra stuff as well. I was struggling to even do my day job back then, so doing stuff as a hobby afterwards was too much. But I was better on my feet again, so I thought, I'll tell you what, when the next season starts, I'm going to try and do some content and join some of the content creators that are out there. But I, at the same time, I was still worried. I was like, if I go out on my own, it's going to be really tough. If I do suffer ill health, then I'd have to take a break totally, and nothing would be done. So I thought if I found someone to work with, then at least we could keep it going, even if I, did struggle again. And I wanted to work with people that I'd worked with before, someone I knew, because I wanted that, that spark, as I said. And it just so happened I was looking around and I noticed that Az had done a kind of like a couple of pilot shows for Blackbox, which were on his YouTube channel. And I saw that he'd done one about 2 months earlier saying that he was going to do it again for the following season. So I just got in touch with Az and thought, well, will he have me as a partner for this? Hoping he would. And he agreed to it. And then we spent the summer kind of coming up with how we're going to, tweak the show a bit, make it a bit more polished, and what content we were going to do. And I went a bit crazy. I said, look, let's get a theme tune done. Let's get some fancy graphics. Let's get a logo done. And Az just go, yeah, he let me run with it. And I was like, I got on with it. And then, between us, we put this stuff together, and it just came together really in the end. And I think we knew exactly how we were going to theme it and what level we were going to go to. But it's kind of grown organically. And like I had with Granville, it's about that, the relationship that we've got together. We know each other very well. We know how we work, because we've worked together on Scoutcast, and that's given us the foundation for it to be a decent show. And then, I think it's just grown on from there really. I've really enjoyed doing it, and it's helped my season, I think. So I'm loving just being a content creator again and doing it just for fun, and it's not paying my mortgage anymore, which is a big relief.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite similar.
How would you? Sorry, go on, Rob.
I was going to say it's quite similar. Like what you went through, Vaz. It's kind of what we did, back in end of December. Like, because originally it was just going to be just a podcast, and we'd just like jump on a call with each other and record the audio and stick the audio out. And then it was like, as you think about it, you're like, oh, actually, if we're sitting on a video call, because of the times that we're in, why don't we do this? And then, we could do this. And then before you know it, we've got FPL captain Chris making us graphics up, and he designed the logo, and then we've got some theme music, and that was all from, should we record an audio podcast? And now, got a YouTube channel, and we're doing live streams every week. And I mean, you get that like little bug for it. And and then, obviously just having someone that, because the missus won't listen to me talk about fantasy football, so I get him to do it once a week.
Well, this is it. You want to scratch that itch, don't you? And the times we've not had, we've not been able to go for a drink with your mates and talk about it. So, it was perfect timing for Az and I to embark on something new. And I think we've been lucky in that, it's one of the one of the byproducts of the horrible time we've had as a well, I was going to say as a country, as a world kind of thing, is that, you know, podcasts and streamers have grown. You know, the popularity of those two mediums has grown over this time, and you know, it's meant that there's more guys coming up like you with new stuff, and it's brilliant. I've been saying all season, the amount of content that's out there is just fantastic. I love it.
How do you think you know, Scoutcast is different to Blackbox, or Blackbox is different to Scoutcast? Would you say it's the same sort of thing, or would you say it's different, or how do you kind of target it, I guess?
Well, I think generally we were trying to make Blackbox more about the feeling of, you know, how to become a better manager, what's behind your decisions when you make them. So obviously we had to do the kind of stuff that Scoutcast and a lot of podcasts do, which is, you know, what transfers we're going to make, who are your captains. We're going to look at some data and stuff like that. But also as we went, Az and I wanted to kind of figure out, you know, look at ourselves, look at our own decision-making process and figure out what was behind that decision. And if we missed something, like, you know, like I was saying, like the rise of Iheanacho recently, we've kind of overlooked him as a captain. It's like, so rather than just move on from that, we'll have a look at that and go, oh, why didn't we go with him? What was stopping us from making that move to make him captain? And so more analysis of the thought process behind how to be an FPL manager, what it takes to be a better FPL manager. Because I think a lot of pods and streams talk about, you know, who the best captains are, who the best players to buy are, but there wasn't many actually delving deeper into the decision-making processes and what you can do to improve those. So I think that's how that was kind of like a you know, a bit of uniqueness that we had. At the same time, I wanted to do you know, dive into data in a different way as well. So I think, you know, the Scoutcast has their staple data that they go to, obviously the ticker and things like goals imminent, which I love, of course. So we wanted to do our own kind of set of tables, if you like, that we use each week and keep the thematics of those. And I think, you know, we got a good mix between just lively chat between Az and I and some data to back up some of the things that we're talking about as well. It's always difficult to get that mix, and I think we've done a decent job at it. But like as FPL managers, we can get better. I mean, we're always looking at what we can do differently. And for next season, I think we've got a few things up our sleeves, and we've got ideas to
well, that's a good segue to the next question. So you announced, so I listen to the FPL Blackbox every week. I love it. And you announced a couple of weeks ago for next season, you're going to launch something called FPL Blackbox Apprentice, I think it's called. Do you want to, I think that's the official name. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of launched, we haven't like, we've got a website coming out. We're going to launch it on that with a bit more detail soon. But it was like, Az and I were talking about what we're going to do pre-season. We were going, oh, you know, it'd be good to, part of the Blackbox thing is to try and do some videos about, if you're new to FPL, these are the concepts, this is how you can approach it. Some, you know, so videos that we were going to do for new players. And we were thinking, well, what's a different way of doing that? Because we don't want to, you know, there's a lot of people doing that kind of thing. And there'll be a lot of people doing it over the summer. We don't want to just go on camera and go, right, this is how you pick your team. This is, you know, this is how you structure your team and all that. So we thought what we do is we do it by like kind of being over the shoulder of a new player. And we were thinking, well, so what we could do, we could recruit someone who's brand new to FPL and then record videos with them, trying to teach them the concepts. And hopefully we can get someone who's, you know, good on camera, and it can be quite entertaining along the way. And then I thought to myself, well, why don't we just get one person each? Why don't we get and we'll make them our apprentices, and we'll see if my apprentice can beat your apprentice. Yeah. And then it just developed from there. We were like, and then we were thinking about, well, it'll also be a way of, you know, throughout the series on Blackbox, we've been talking about how we're influenced by things, whether it be the noise on Twitter, whether it be effective ownership, whether it be price rises and early transfers, whether it be XG. These are all things that kind of are inputs that we have as FPL managers. And some people use some more than others. They weight them differently. And some people are affected by the noise. Some people are affected by doing content and not doing content, or being on Twitter and not being on Twitter. So we're going to kind of use these people as experiments and in a way as guinea pigs. We're going to kind of start them off as newcomers to FPL, but then bit by bit we're going to gradually introduce them to new concepts. So I'm not going to, so with my apprentice I might not introduce them to like the members area on Scout and start hitting them with XG, I'll let them pick their initial squad just off of their names that they're familiar with, perhaps, and I'll expose them to a few pre-season results and go, does that change your mind in any way? That kind of thing. And then gradually, as the season progresses, we're going to introduce them to other things, like, well, we're going to create a Twitter account with them, get them in the community, and see how interacting with the community will affect their performance as FPL managers. Will it make them better? Will it make them worse? Will it make them more confused? So we're going to study how introducing these different elements is going to affect their season over the course of 38 weeks.
Absolutely fascinating. That is going to be great. That is going to be
like
great. It's like Big
experiment.
Brother.
Yeah,
it's like FPL Big Brother.
Yeah, so we were talking about going, this should be cool. It could be an absolute disaster, but it depends who we get, and it depends, if they're relaxed with us taking the mickey a bit, because there'll be a bit of that. But also we're there to help them. I mean, hopefully and we're going to do it for a few seasons and then see how these people emerge. They might be in the top 10k in a few seasons. It'd be amazing to say, oh look, this was one of our apprentices and they've now gone on to be a top player. That's not the objective though. The objective is to really see, because like people say to me, oh, how does being on Twitter affect your game? Well, I don't really know. I haven't really got a clue. So this isn't a bid to try and find out, to see how those things affect different people differently.
So have you found your person yet, or you're getting people to apply, or how do people get it?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a website address, apprentice@fplblackbox.com. So email us there if you know someone. So we're looking for like your dad or your next door neighbour or your mum or your girlfriend or your best mate at work who likes football but has never played FPL, that kind of thing. Ideally, we're not looking for someone who already plays and has some experience of it, because we want
definitely not going to be anyone that's watching.
Well, no, it'll be someone. It'll be someone who's watching who knows someone. I mean, I know people who are big football fans who never play fantasy, and I keep saying, "Oh, why don't you play fantasy?" They're like, "Oh, no, it's a bit geeky," and and I think in a way they're a bit intimidated, because I've always seen fantasy football, people who know football really well, who are scholars of, in terms of fans, they've read all the books, they watch loads of matches, they have an opinion on players. One of the reasons I think they don't play fantasy football is they're worried that if they play it and don't do very well, it kind of besmirches their reputation as someone who knows about football. It's like, well, if I know about football, I don't want to play fantasy football and come 6 million in the world. So they're kind of worried that it's a way of quantifying their knowledge of football. And so I think it can be a bit intimidating, especially if they've got mates who play it and they're pretty good. They won't want to look silly. So I think what we're here to do is help them get over that and go, look, we'll help you play at a decent level and teach you the basics of it and help you find success. But it's going to be down to you and how you use some of the stuff that we give you. We're not going to give them the answers. We're not going to say, right, captain this player, sign this player. It's going to be their decisions. We're just going to introduce them to some of the concepts bit by bit that we think help them become better managers, which is what, as an hour I found over the years. So I think there's people out there. It's just we'll see. We've certainly got a couple of strong contenders at the moment, but we want more. We definitely want more.
It's a fascinating idea. And I think the fact that you're going to be having one apprentice each, and, is it going to be a case of you're going to be teaching your apprentice what you think is best, and Az is going to be teaching what he thinks is best? Because obviously you guys have two completely different styles of management. Is that kind of how it is going to be?
We're going to agree what we're going to teach our apprentices at any one time. So I think what we'll do is we'll draw up a list of the elements that we want to introduce over the season, and then he'll choose one route. So Az might go, well, I'm going to build the first 5 game weeks around the eye test. I'm going to work with my apprentice and make sure they watch match of the day, that they watch highlights, watch as many live matches as they can. Whereas I might go, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go purely on stats. So I'm going to introduce my apprentice to the members area on Scout, and I'm going to, tell them some of the tables that I use and see how Az's apprentice gets on with the eye test against mine with stats. So we're going to choose different approaches at any one time, and then we will cross over, I'm sure. But that's how it's going to go. And we're not going to give them the answers. Like I say, we're just going to give them the tools and see what they do with them. And then we'll add to those tools as we go to see how the effect of, suddenly going, okay, well, there's 4 live games this weekend. I want you to watch them all. And then talk to me on Monday about what you thought and what players stood out and that kind of thing. So it's just going to be fascinating to see
I can't wait.
how a new player is going to adapt and take to this stuff. And because I think we've played the game for so long, it's actually, we're so close to it. It's difficult to quantify what things are most valuable to us. I use stats a lot, but I watch a lot of matches and I'm on Twitter now. So I find it difficult to separate all that. It's become a mess and a jumble for me. But for a new player, we can kind of introduce it gradually. It's actually an effective way of seeing what's effective and what isn't.
Yeah.
It's like
it's like go on, Rob.
Just thinking, you know, the what's his name? Drago from Rocky, the Russian boxer. He's been like prepped to take on the world. And that's what you're going to be doing to someone. That's
one approach. Or if you're Rocky, it's all about your heart, isn't it? So maybe Az will go with a much more pure and kind of emotional driven approach. We'll agree what we're going to do, and we'll see which works best and whose apprentice comes out on top. So it'll be fun.
I'm looking forward to that. It'll be
definitely sounds good. So another venture you've got coming up this year is Fantasy Football Fest, which I know myself and Rob are really excited about. What's the story behind that? You want to talk to us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So when I was on Scout, it was Chris who owns Scout, who looks after it now. He was kind of, his other business is heavily into events. So we always talked about doing a fantasy football event while we were on Scout, but we always saw it as a kind of an added thing that we might do one year when we get round to it. But our core business was obviously the website and the members area and working with the Premier League and so on. So that was, we didn't really have the bandwidth then to do anything with that idea. But we always thought that, we had Scout Camp every year, which was kind of the get together for the contributors on Scout. And we knew that was always an enjoyable event. And we thought if we opened it up to the public, perhaps that could become something bigger. But we never got round to it. And then obviously when I left Scout, I was aware of what James had done on Planet FPL. James and Sudge had done some events around the country, so I knew they'd kind of dipped their toe, and that intrigued me. And so when I set up with Blackbox, I think I got in touch with James early on and said, "Look, if ever you do another event in Manchester or London, perhaps me and Az can join you. We can do a joint thing and like grow it in size." And he was up for that. And then Ed posted about doing Fest, and I was like, "This is more or less what I was thinking along the lines of." So I got in touch, and Ed was looking for someone to come on board who was established in the community. And he got Johnny interested as well. So the two of us seemed to be a couple that could work well together with Ed. And Ed is brilliant. He's done everything to kind of get this off the ground. And Johnny and I are being carried along to some extent by Ed's enthusiasm. But Johnny and I are both well up for it as well. We really see the value this could add to the community of a kind of annual event where people get together and it's just a social idea of fantasy football. Fantasy football is such a social thing. And obviously we haven't had that over the last year. So we're all kind of mad for it when it does come about. But I think it's going to be a success every year, because I just think getting together with like-minded individuals, talking about fantasy football, it's not something I'd ever get tired of. And I think the community feel that as well. I think there's a lot of people in the community who will enjoy just meeting some of the names in the community, but also people who play the game passionately and want to talk about it with others. And we just want to get some events off the ground. We think it would be a great thing for what is now a massive community, and we're just going to see where it goes. Hopefully in a few years it'll be a regular thing with 1,000 people or more turning up to a venue, and maybe we'll do several around the country. We're even looking at perhaps even going to other nations in a few years' time. And Scandinavia, US and India have got really big followings, for example, where we think that events could be held. So who knows how far it's going to go. Jani, myself and Ed are very excited about it. We've got Hub, Scout and Fix involved as well, which was massive for us to get the three big players out there involved and on board. I mean, that is literally uniting the community, which is what we wanted to do. And so we're very excited about where it's going to go on our first launch party event, and then what follows after that.
No, and what's the kind of essence of it? So I know it's bringing the community together, but is it, some people say, is it just to piss up in terms of, people meeting together and having a drink, or is there an agenda to it where, something goes on, or?
Yeah, I think with the launch party, it's going to be a party, right? It's going to be like we're out of lockdown, we're getting together with FPL managers. It's going to be more of a kind of just a social thing. But our vision for the event is very much like live podcasts going on, live streaming going on, right? So we want content creators there doing live shows, and we want, you know, film. We think we can get film crews there interviewing some of the top contributors, some of the top content creators, and producing content that will go out there pre-season. You know, and there's going to be workshops and clinics and stuff like that. Rate my teams, and you know, we're going to be pre-season, right? So we're going to be probably the week going into the start of the season when everyone's going to be wanting to talk about their team,
and
get
the
their team
hype's
looked
really
at by other
there.
people.
And
yeah, exactly. I think it's, you know, if we open that up, you know, people will say, oh, it's just going to be the content creators. It's not. It's going to be a public event, which, you know, which will have tickets for anyone who plays fantasy football, not just FPL, can come to this, and there'll be something for them at the event. That's what we want. And obviously, you know, the companies like, you know, there's other companies, other games out there who'll be interested in being part of this because they want to grow their audience. There's going to be a bit of that. And there's going to be people out there who do merchandise, who work on tools to help community, who want to be there and show off what they do, right? And there's going to be an element of that as well. So there's just so many possibilities with it. And obviously the biggest thing is it's a social thing as well. So
Yeah,
you say, or is it just going to be a piss up? That it's not
that was
just,
just
you know,
that was just I was asking the question.
yeah, sure. But that is a crucial element of it. When we got
Yeah.
together and we devised what the events are going to be, the biggest thing, the overwhelmingly biggest thing is people just want to get together and talk fantasy football,
Yeah,
right?
agreed.
That's the selling point, really. Yes, there's going to be a lot of the community names there, we hope. And yes, there'll be lots of opportunities to talk to some of those guys and meet them in person, that kind of thing. And I'd like to hope that, you know, the games, whether it be FPL, Sky or Fan Team or whatever, they want to be there and have a presence there and meet some of the people who play their game or could play their game. So I think that, you know, it's going to be more than just a social thing, but that is overwhelmingly the biggest thing for us. We wanted to just bring people together and just enjoy being around other people who have a passion for fantasy football.
It's really good. It reminds me a bit of, do you know when you're in Freshers Week and you used to go to a Freshers event and there was all these different companies that would be there and like talk to you about their product or their thing or what it is they want to talk about, but combine this with people that know each other by name on Twitter and a bar, and it just sounds like loads of fun.
There's a guy that Nick Triggerlips in the community. He said just this. He said it sounds like fresh. Yeah, he says it sounds like Freshers Week where Scout are just going to recruit their new members. It's not that, right? It's certainly not going to be that. It's not going to be the hard sell. I mean, obviously, you know, we're going to have names there, and they're going to be wanting to show what they do, what they bring to the community, whether that be podcasters doing, you know, a live podcast, or whether it would be Hub, Scout or Fix showing off what they do. There's going to be elements of that. But like I said, the most popular area would be probably where the drinks are being served and where you can have a chat, right? So
but I think that's a really good thing. Like I don't see anything wrong if I'm into fantasy football. If I go to an event and people are talking to me about, you know, even if there is Scout and Hub and all these places that are talking to me about things, I don't mind listening to. I think that's a really good thing.
No,
really
and you know, I want to meet Ragaboli. I want to meet Ben Krillin. I've never met these people. I've spoken to them, but I've never met them. And so it's like, you know, there's people in the community who have done brilliant things. And I think, you know, getting everyone together under one roof, if we can, will be a fantastic thing. And it will mean the community just gets stronger. There's nothing like meeting someone in person and, you know, and having that connection to grow the community that we've got online. I mean, it's brilliant as it is, but it's going to be better, I think, for having this yearly event. And we hope to do one pre-season, one at Christmas, and then see where it goes from there.
Rob, what do you think? That's a good idea, right?
Well, you did forget to mention one other game based on a...
Oh, yeah, we want you guys there. Absolutely.
On a retro Championship Manager game based around fantasy football. But I mean, I think over the last year, like personally, like I've been working with 10 other guys almost every day of the week for the last year, producing Champman FPL, and we've never been. apart from two of the guys, because they live in FPL Tactician and FPL Captain, they both live in Bournemouth, so they've met each other, but they're the only two people to have met each other, and we've kind of all said that this is an opportunity for us to not only meet each other, but some of the I probably have met some of the closest friends that I've because you've got your friends that you've got at home, but then I've made so many really close new friends in the last year during lockdown and through Champman, and who I mean, there's a few of them I've got we've got WhatsApp numbers. I was happy to exchange numbers with them. And a couple of other guys that I'll talk to once a week. That if they live,
we haven't even met, Rob.
Yeah, and one day
we haven't met.
One day we could even record a podcast next to each other.
I've got to say, Rob, I want to, and I really mean this. I think Champman has been, the pinnacle of the FPL community or the fantasy community over the last 12 months. It actually has been a triumph. It represents just how strong the community can be for me. The fact that was got off the ground just through passion and hard work of those few individuals, and then it grew to what it's become now, and it's going to grow to be bigger. I've no doubt about that. And there's no ego there. There's no money involved. It's pure hard work and passion has got that to where it is now, and the enthusiasm and the relationship with the people involved. I just think that highlights exactly what I'm talking about. It's absolutely fantastic. And it was when I my health recovered and I came back into the community. It's one of the first things I came across was Champman Fantasy, and I couldn't quite believe what it was and how it had got together. And I watched James do a live feed. It was one of the first. The only thing that spoiled it was Luke was winning it. That spoiled it for me. Luke's a good friend of mine from Scout Days, and it was like, oh, I can't believe the Sable's winning it. But yeah, I watched James on the live feed, and I was staggered. That was just when you were getting the graphics together, and Captain had got all that together, and the live animated boards and stuff like that. And I was like, this has all happened while I've been away, really, while I've not really been involved with the community. And it was one of the things that convinced me to get back into the fantasy community again, because I thought, if these people have got the passion to get this off the ground to this point and do this, then I want to be part of this again. And I messaged Simply Goal and said, look, when you do it next season, can I do something with it? Can I be part of it? That was before I had Blackbox. It just was something that it kind of just lifted me and got me off my arse again and convinced me that I've got to be part of the community again. So in a way, it played a big part in me getting back into things and what I'm doing now. So yeah, I just want to thank you and the team for what you did there. And we absolutely want you at Fest, because you're the epitome of why we're doing it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Some nice words.
It's nice to hear, because we do. I think, with what everyone's been through, and we know that so many people struggle, and it's just nice to hear that people. It has been a way of really bringing everyone together. Along with there's been so many other things as well, that just ways that people have been able to connect to each other. And I think I'm if someone said to me, "Oh, Fantasy Football Fest is tomorrow," I'll be get myself ready now, ready to get out the door and get up there, because I'm really looking for I'm looking forward to chatting football all day or all evening, and just shaking some hands and clinking a glass, because it's as I said, some of these people talk to them every day, and this joker next to me that way, and never been in the same room. So can't wait.
There's going to be so many conversations we all want to have. I don't know if one evening's going to be enough, but at least we'll set things up, right? At least we'll start.
Let me officially put our name and our podcast in the hat that we want to be there. If you need anything from a content, we're there.
Absolutely, and hopefully for years to come as well. And a live podcast from the from the first or second event that we do will hopefully be on the cards as well, because we want to do lots of that, and that'll be fun. That'd be brilliant.
Definitely.
Right, so Mark, we've got some questions now from the Twitter community. So a bit about how you manage FPL and just FPL in general. So the first one's from FPL Summers. Essentially, you can watch an unlimited amount of football for work purposes. How do you determine when you are watching unnecessary games to the detriment of family time?
Yeah, well, I can't call it work anymore.
I'll just stop you for a second.
Anymore.
This is
go on.
So I mentioned, well, just before we started recording, Mark didn't realise that we live just literally 2 minutes up the road from each other. But
so we can meet tomorrow.
FPL Summers is someone else from Horsham in Sussex that is in the top 2K.
Is he?
Yeah, right. He's third in my mini league at the moment. Yeah, so some top Horsham managers. Yeah,
that's it. Well, we can meet down the pub at the weekend. That's fine. I can't call it work anymore. I mean, when it was my job was obviously when I was doing scout full time, working for the Premier League, and I was watching an awful lot of football. You almost become, it's almost too much of a good thing, and that was before lockdown. You know, I was more or less, you know, consuming it all the time. And he's absolutely right. I could justify it and say it was my job. You know, I tried to watch every live game I could. And it got too much. And in the end, you know, the amount of time I was spending watching football and analysing it and writing articles about it and talking about it on camera got too much. And it did get in the way of family life. And I had to make a decision to get out. And so I'm being very cautious. I mean, lockdown has tested it because obviously we've had more football on TV than ever, right? So it's been difficult for me to make sure I don't slip back into that and then don't see any of my family at the weekend or spend evenings doing too much. So I've been very careful with it, but my partner's been brilliant with me. She's kind of loosened the lead bit by bit and allowed me to do more and more. And I think we've got the balance right together. You've got to have a good and strong relationship, obviously, with your partner and your family. She understands it's my passion, and so she allows me to exercise that and enjoy it as much as I can. But I draw the line. I mean, a weekend, for example, I will probably pick, if there's 4 or 5 games on, I will pick 2 or 3 to watch, and the other 2 I'll let go, and I'll watch the highlights, or I record every match. So if it's a match that I miss and I think I really need to watch that for research purposes, I will watch it back. You know, I'll wait for her to go to bed and I'll watch it back to the early hours or something. So I always have the ability to watch every match, but I don't watch them all live. So I probably watch a 1 or 2 on Saturday, 1 or 2 on Sunday, and miss a couple is basically what I'm doing. And I don't watch Champions League at all, never, until basically about now. Semi-finals I'll probably watch, but I don't watch any of the group games because I have to draw the line. I mean, obviously my knowledge suffers as a result of that, and I have to fill in the blanks and watch a few highlights and stuff like that. But I purposely don't watch Champions League until the very later rounds, because otherwise I find it's just too much, and I have to make sure I give my family some of my time. And I think if Champions League, if you throw that in as well, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, it's too much. So I deliberately avoid watching live Champions League games to give myself that balance.
I've got a question on kind of the eye test and watching football. So how, obviously you use stats a lot, and obviously Blackbox is heavily focused on stats. Where does eye test come into that? So, you know, you've got players like Vardy who don't really show in the stats. How do you kind of decide, you know, to bring players like that in or out versus players who are stats based? And kind of how do you combine the two together and realize that that is the correct decision?
Yeah, well, that's the trick, isn't it? I mean, if you learn how to do that perfectly, then you're going to do very well. And I can't say I do it perfectly. I think I've got a decent eye for form. Form, if form's a thing. I guess what I mean by that is when a player shows confidence, like Iheanacho's showing now, like Lingard showed, like Gundogan's transformation earlier in the season when he moved position and what that meant. You can see some of that through data. I mean, Iheanacho definitely showed up through data. Gundogan definitely showed up through data. You know, I remember doing a black box where we we basically said, look at this, look at what Gondwan's doing in the numbers, and we have to get him, and it turned out to be correct. But then you look at Lingard and you look at his data, and you can't really anticipate the end product. The output was extraordinary compared to what the data was suggesting. So with Lingard, it was all about watching his swagger on the pitch, how he held himself, what decisions he was making, whether he had the confidence to carry the ball a lot, whether he was shooting a lot and taking on players a lot. And when you start seeing all of that, you start thinking, you start piecing it together with your knowledge of that player over previous seasons, and you start realizing that, okay, you've got to take it seriously. So I think for the eye test to work well, you've got to build up some experience of players, and you've got to know from your knowledge of that player when they're showing signs of confidence, when they're showing signs of, okay, they're in a good spell now, and there's every chance that could continue. And then you use that in combination with data, or I tend to use it in combination data. Obviously, you've got to be careful of confirmation bias, because you can watch a match and go, oh, that player looks electric, looks on form. And then you start looking at data and you try and find data to confirm what you think you've seen. So, I mean, part of Blackbox is knowing these things and being aware of them. That doesn't necessarily mean you avoid them, but at least if you're aware of them, you've got more chance of being victim of it. And that's the essence of Blackbox, really, is that kind of analysis of what's going on in your head when you're making a decision. Are you putting more emphasis on stats? Are you basing your opinion on what you've seen and try and get stats to fit the story? It's that awareness which hopefully we're investigating through the course of the show and helping people realise their own game and the way they play it. So yeah, the balance of eye test and stats is I think a formula for success if you can do it successfully, but it's not easy to do.
Yeah. All right, we've got another question from Jane Agner, who asks, who's your favourite all-time FPL asset in each position?
Blimey, that's
that's a tough one. You can just you can say a couple of players.
Well, I mean, the defender's got to be Matt Taylor, who always did well for me. He was obviously an out of position player, classed as a defender, playing midfield. He had that season for Portsmouth where he played left wing and he was getting forward. He was a source of a lot of their goals and assists. He was on set plays and he was fantastic. And Matt Taylor's always a defender that I always remember owning and doing well with. Going back to the midfielder, I'd have to go back to the Telegraph days when Dwight York was at Villa and Ron Atkinson turned him, I think it was Ron, turned him into a centre forward, having been a winger. And,
was he midfielder? I didn't realise that. He was a striker.
He was classed as a midfielder.
I think when he first arrived at Villa, he was a midfielder.
Yeah, he was a winger, so they classed him as a midfielder. And I noticed that Ron was playing him up front pre-season, I think, and I got on early. And because of that, I mean, he was a cheap midfielder as well. And he scored like 19 goals, I think, in his first season. And I got him for something like, it was an auction, so I got him for next to nothing. And so I won my league that year off the back of Dwight York. So he's a midfielder I always remember. And people go like, he was never a midfielder, but he was for a couple of seasons. Up front, God, it's really tough, that is. Really tough up front. I've got to go Harry Kane because he's always been a player that I'd supported from the start.
When he was 4.5.
When he was 4.5, and he broke into the first team. He had that run of European games where he scored goals for them. And I think I first got him for the Swansea away game. And I think he scored straight away. And I just kept faith of him. And all through, even though I'm a big Salah fan as well, and I've had Salah a lot since he arrived in the Premier League, Kane has always been my go-to striker and the one that I rely on more than Aguero. So I've kind of ignored Aguero during his pomp a lot of the time because of Kane, because you can't really have them both. So I'd have to go Kane up front. So that's Matt Taylor, Dwight York, Harry Kane. Goalkeeper, my word, that's tough. Goalkeeper. It's not a position you remember a lot, is it? That's the trouble. And I can't remember a season. It will come to me at 3 o'clock in the morning, but it doesn't come to me now.
Ding.
Yeah, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and scream, Nick Pope! And wake the missus up. Oh, sure, not again.
You can wake her up like you did about Grealish.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's Yeah, I don't know a keeper yet. Give me a few minutes. I'll have a think about that.
No
Ask me another one, and I'll come up with something.
Next question's from @LuxSun. What are your thoughts on taking hits in general? Lots of them, not many of them, somewhere in the middle. This is my first year playing FPL, and I feel like I took a lot of hits at the beginning, but now I'm trying not to take as many unnecessary hits, and it's not working. Oh, sorry, and it is working.
See, this is classic apprentice stuff. This is what we're going to do with our
Yeah.
apprentices.
He's a year too early.
He is. I'm a big advocate of hits in the first half of the season. The first 18 game weeks is where you establish your team value. And I am a big believer in team value being a factor that matters. I think it's not impossible to have a good season and not care about team value, that's for sure. But I feel that it does smooth the course of the season if you've got more funds available to you, and if you watch player prices and you make good decisions with player prices. I'm not saying you make early transfers rashly, but I think if there's a player that you want and you think that player isn't a player who's injury prone, he isn't playing midweek, and he's showing form that you back to sustain, I don't see any reason why you don't go early if you've got that transfer laid out, and try and get the rise rather than get them after the rise. I know there's a big school of thought who say you make your transfers later when you've got more data. I absolutely see that point
General
of view.
believes in that, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. I don't know. He's made a few hits. He's probably made more hits than me this season, I think. But so I think it's a blend of strategies. This is what I mean. It's like I don't think it's one school or another. I'm not exclusively a manager who takes loads of hits and makes early transfers. I'd like to think I make early transfers when the early transfer is sensible and when there's low risk. I mean, a big part of it is having a decent bench, for example. If you know you look at your team and you go, well, to be honest, like this week, I look at my team and go, well, I've got Dallas at Brighton, and at the moment he's on my bench. Now, to be honest, I want to get Dallas in my team. But if Rafinha's fit, then he doesn't play. He's on my bench. So if this was game week 2 and I had Dallas on my bench and I was thinking, well, I want to play him anyway, and there was a player I wanted, like say it's the Fernandes to Son transfer this week, which is probably what I'm going to do, and say that it was early in the season and Son was going up and Fernandes was going down, and it was Sunday night and there was still 5 days to go. If I looked at my team and thought, well, if all goes belly up and I get an injury, I've got Dallas coming off the bench anyway, or I really want to get in, and I know that one player's going down, one player's going up, and Son might actually go up twice, I'd do that transfer because I know I've got a fullback in Dallas, and I know that there's a swing of at least 0-2 between Fernandes going down and Son going up. And if it was early in the season, I would absolutely make that early. I wouldn't wait for the Friday team news because I know that I've got Dallas up my sleeve to absorb any injuries. So that's what I do. I wouldn't do it if I had a rubbish bench. If I had no one I wanted to bring in, then I would think twice about it. But certainly in that scenario, I would do it.
Yeah, there was that period sort of between December and mid-February where there was that real uncertainty, wasn't there, whether games were actually going to happen, and you really had to sort of bite your finger, stick your hand in your pocket, and not make any transfers, and kind of take the hit on your team value a little bit because there was games getting called off left, right, and centre. But I mean,
but we'll
touch wood.
Be in that,
it
won't be in that situation.
It won't happen. It won't happen again. And
this has been a unique set of challenges this season. But I think the argument, if you like, between do you make early transfers or do you wait till all the team news is in and make more informed transfers, that will go on forever. And I think with our apprentices, as we'll do one strategy and I'll do the other, and we'll see how we get on. That's kind of an example of what we want to look at. How do you prove that one is the best strategy? I don't think one is the best strategy. I think it's a blend of the two. But we're going to look at it and we're going to try and see what we find by using the two approaches.
The team
I just can't wait for that. It's going to be so much fun.
The team needs you get isn't always true anyway. I mean, look at Dean Smith. Jack Grealish he was fit 6 weeks ago.
Don't mention Dean. He's done for me after what he said.
He's in the bin. Put Dean Smith in the bin.
I really liked him, and I had him as my manager of the year. And when he said he said about, it just drove me nuts. I'm like, don't say that.
I
really felt let down when he said that.
Yeah, I was up
Was
there
it
with
your
the
podcast or
Dean
a
Smith camp.
podcast had got that on a record where they play that clip?
I live in the real world, not the fantasy
That's
world.
the one.
Yeah, there it is.
That's the one. There it is. It was Blackbox. I knew it was Blackbox.
Almost
I knew
spat
it
my
was
beer
somewhere.
It just made me so disappointed that he said that, because it's such a cheap comment to make about fantasy football, isn't it? It's like, oh, it's got the word fantasy in. I live in the real world. It's like, come on, it's such an obvious cheap shot. If that's the, I know he was kind of resentful of the fact that it was even brought up as a question, and I know internally it was a problem for them, perhaps more than they let on. But it was around the Grealish injury, and let's face it, what has Dean Smith said for the last 5 or 6 press conferences about Grealish? He's lived in the fancy world, if you ask me, based on what he said, because a few times he said Grealish is close to a return, and it's just been the whole escapade about Grealish's injury and how the fantasy football league played a part in that has been a bit of a mess for them. And I just took it. I just felt really disappointed when he said that. I felt he could have dealt with it a lot better and in a more kind of grown up way. And sadly, it's kind of, now when I listen to him, I'm like, oh, I can't get over it. I will get over it, because he's a good manager, there's no doubt, and I'm sure he's a decent guy, but it's put me off him a lot since he said that.
I think a lot of people have. Right, next question's from Pep Talk. Since you started playing FPL, who have been your go-to players most often? Like that first name you put on the team sheet when the game launches, or those trusted bench fodders you've recruited to do a job year after year? He says, for me, it was always Aguero and Simon Francis.
that's a pairing, isn't it? yeah. Can you? Well, I mean, Salah always, Kane always, if I can get them both. So those two are kind of go-tos for me. And I always like attacking fullbacks. So ever since Trent has emerged, or even before Trent has emerged, if you ask Joe, he'll remember that. I want fullbacks that give me the promise of attacking return. So I'm a big Alonso fan. I'm a big Trent fan. And even when it doesn't look like a good idea to get them, I will try and get them in. So I would say one of Salah and Kane, probably both. And then whoever fits the profile of an attacking fullback at the time. Trent will probably always be in my team now for the next few years, because I think he's not going anywhere, and I don't think his game is going to change. He's not going to morph into a fullback who stays back, and he's not going to be Wan-Bissaka any day now, is he? So he is always going to be an attacking friend. So I think Trent will always be a mainstay of my team every season now. And cheap players, well, you have to adapt, don't you? I mean, I think it's very difficult to predict and have a go-to every time. I always favour a cheap striker, though. I always favour going big in midfield, 5 decent players you can play every week in midfield, and then go for a cheaper striker. So I'll always look probably for at least one promoted striker is what I tend to do.
And last couple of questions. Sorry, go on, Rob.
I think this year with the like wide forwards becoming midfielders, that kind of just backs that up a little bit in the midfield. Like, bulk out your midfield. Like how many people at the start of this season had like the likes of Salah, Mane, Aubameyang. I know he was a big captain option in game week 1. Rashford, Greenwood, Sterling, like all of these wide forward players that you're getting your extra point off of them. I mean, there's only been a couple of them that have actually ended up performing how you'd expect over the season. But I'm quite similar in that case. It's like finding you try and find your bargains in defence. Like in the last few years, like Scott Dallas bargain this year, John Lundstrom last year. You try and find that bargain that's going to play every week, pick up some points here and there. Could be out of position because the guy that programmed him into the game didn't look into the data properly, or he changed position in pre-season or something. And then finding that striker, that Timu Pukki will probably be a name that will be banded around the community over the summer.
I went there originally, and I'll probably go there again. I mean, one thing I'm going to do be more wary of is this year I fell into the Werner trap well and truly. I didn't really want him because I wasn't convinced he was going to kind of do what he did in the Bundesliga. But the fear of his ownership convinced me I needed to go with him to start with. And I had Ings in mind instead. I wanted to go Ings and Antonio, and I didn't go either of those and ended up going Werner. And who else did I can't remember who I else had up front with him. But I fell right into that trap. And that was my own insecurity at fearing that Werner, if he did hit the ground running, would massively rise in price because of his ownership from day one. I think he had like 45% ownership game week one. And I was one of them. And I couldn't wait to get off him. And he hasn't really got getting near what we expected of him, or what 45% of FPL managers expected of him.
Should we just ask now, for another Bundesliga striker that may or may not be in the Premier League next season, Erling Haaland, yes or no, game week one, no matter what team, who he goes to?
That's different. I think Erling Haaland is a different animal altogether.
He is an absolute beast of a striker.
Yeah, I think it would be very difficult not to be tempted to get Erling Haaland. So I've just contradicted everything I've just said there.
You set that one up, Rob.
Yeah, it was nicely done. You set me up completely. No, I do think that I don't know. Whenever I see Haaland play, it just scares the life out of me, and I'm not even on the pitch with him trying to stop him. So he is an incredible athlete, and Alfie, his dad, is a player and a man I hold in very high regard as a Forest fan. I loved Alfie Haaland, so I've got that kind of sentimental attachment to him as well, to his son. So I want his son to do well. I'd love him to come to the Premier League, and I'd love to welcome him into my game week one squad. So let's see what happens.
There you go. Right.
Let's just hope it's not the pep roulette that we're having to deal with as well.
Yeah.
Before we move on to FPL this season, just last couple of ones. From Matt Francis. When did you first learn about effective ownership, and do you wish that you didn't?
Great question. Obviously, it was probably the last couple of years. And there's a few sites out there that have introduced the concept. I was aware of it, but wasn't really aware of what it meant and how you use it. I guess it would be nice not to be aware of it. I think there's an innocence of the game 3 or 4 years ago when we weren't aware of that, and we perhaps weren't aware of how many people were captaining a certain player, and that might put us off. So I think we all kind of hanker for those days where that was kind of blocked off and we weren't aware of these things, because we're aware, we know that they affect our decision making. And again, it's a black box thing, and we've looked at it on black box, and Az has spoken about it a lot. There is no doubt that effective ownership has a influence on our decision making, and again, it's being aware of it is the best way perhaps of managing that. And I think Az is very much against the idea that it introduces fear in your decision making, and I can see where he's coming from with that. There is an aspect of that. I mean, I went Salah captain this week, and one of the things that no doubt contributed to it was the fact that I knew he would be captained by a lot of people. So in a way, effective ownership played a part in that decision. I shouldn't have let that influence me, but I think I probably did. So yeah, I wish that I wasn't aware of it as I was, but I think if you use it effectively, it can help you as well, because you can use it and go the opposite way. There can be people who went Iheanacho because they knew that he would have a lower effective ownership. Therefore, they went Iheanacho to get a higher rank rise if he came in. So it's not a negative thing if you turn it into something more positive. You use it in the right way.
Good answer. Right. What's your biggest regret this season? Either a player you got in that didn't do anything, or a player you missed out on, or a bad chip decision?
Yeah, well, it's Werner at the start for sure. It took me a few weeks to get out of that, and then I captained him at West Brom as well. I had faith that he would settle and do well early on, and he didn't, and so I kind of lost ground there. I didn't get on Son and Kane early enough. The West Ham game, a lot of people were playing their wild card going into that West Ham home game where Son and Kane did very well, and I wasn't keen on backing Spurs at that point. I still felt I wasn't convinced by Mourinho And well, that turned out to be true, but I wasn't convinced that Mourinho's tactics were being kind of superseded by Kane and Son's brilliance, because that's what it looked like. It looked like Mourinho was playing negative, but Son and Kane weren't having any of it, and were still getting points and playing out of their socks, right? So playing out of their boots for. But yeah, so I should have gone with that. I should have backed Son and Kane for that. And I'm a big Harry Kane fan, so why didn't I? I don't know. So that's probably my biggest regret. There hasn't been many things that I look back on and think I should have done that differently. The odd thing, but nothing major. So Werner and not getting on Spurs early enough were probably the two things I look at and think, had I done that, I'd probably be, in the top 1K already, hopefully. But it just wasn't to be.
One last question from me. So I'm sure you've seen over the years the banter on Twitter about like BPS or assists that shouldn't have been given, and everyone saying, "Oh, Sutherns must have had him in his team. That's
not
why."
A Watkins owner.
Yeah, not what something like that. Do you want to finally put that rumor to rest?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've nothing to do with it now. I'm not working with the Premier League on anything at all. Back in the day when I worked in editorial, I obviously had to scrutinise the BPS and try and explain it. And obviously, assist decisions, I had to explain those as well. I mean, I was on Facebook Live on a Monday morning when the decisions had been made, and I played a part in explaining some of those decisions. So I know the systems very well because I was involved in the game, right? So obviously I'm going to be aware of stuff. So it does get to me when I see people on Twitter reacting as passionate as they do about a decision. I understand it because I'm passionate about the game. God, you've probably seen it tonight already, but so there aren't many as passionate as me about FPL. So I understand why people get wound up by it. But
seeing your name attached to it must have upset you quite some, right?
What well, not really. I mean, I expected it when you start working. You're on the FBL show, and they know you're writing the articles, and you're behind some of the editorial. You expect to be associated with it, and it didn't really get to me because I know in heart of hearts, I've got the integrity of the game. That's the first and foremost. When I work with the Premier League, the integrity of the game was first and foremost with everything I did. I didn't have any bias towards my own team and the players that I had picked. Obviously, when I was on the FBL show, the stuff I was talking about and some of the things that I recommended were steered by what I was doing with my own team. That's bound to happen. I mean, it happens with what you guys are talking about on your podcast. You're going to be influenced by what you're thinking, right? Mm-hmm. I tried to remove that as best I can. I think I did a good job. I think I gave good advice on the show. I still had good seasons despite doing that, despite trying to give impartial advice. So I think that was a success. And I think being so in the public and so closely associated with the game, I was always going to get a bit of flack on social media. I wasn't really in Twitter at the time. I didn't, during those years when I was involved in the game at that level, I didn't have an active Twitter account. So I didn't really see a lot of it. I'm sure if I go back and search for it now, I can see it, but that's probably not a good idea. But I can absolutely guarantee, or I can promise that all the time I worked with the guys on the game or with the Premier League, it was only the integrity of the game that I cared about, and it still is. When a decision like the Watkins one is made, I know what's behind that decision because I used to work with those rules and explain them. So I know exactly the process that has gone into making that decision and the explanation behind it. And I try to go on Twitter now and represent that. And the official account doesn't want to get into arguments with individuals on Twitter. I can though, so that's fine. So I try and do that for them on their behalf. They're not asking me to do it. It's just when I see it, I can't stop myself. I cannot stop myself getting involved because I want to help clarify it, but also I want to put a stop to some of the silly comments that get made about, this game is a farce, it's rigged and all this. I mean, come on. No one's rigging it. No one's giving
you joking about it on Blackbox, like saying, I just got the call from the official. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's, I have no influence on it whatsoever. But it's something that I know very well how the process works because obviously I was partly involved. So I can help the community understand the decisions. And I'm not saying mistakes aren't made, but genuinely, I look back over the last 4 or 5 seasons, and I don't think there have been a mistake. And there was a classic mistake while I was there, which was a mistaken identity for a Swansea goal. I can't remember what the player was, but it was a total mistaken identity, and the points were given to the wrong player. And I remember that, and I can tell you now, that absolutely haunted me for a long time afterwards, because, no one wants to see a mistake in the game like that. And I didn't feel responsible, but it still, upset me that the game had made a wrong decision. Since then, I don't think there's been any cases like that at all. I think they've been absolutely rock solid with the decision making, and every decision that they make about assists can be justified. There is a rule that can be applied that explains it. And there's some objectivity in there about, did he intend to cross it to that area? Did he intend to cross it to that player? You can argue some of that, but generally, I don't think there's been a mistake, I would say. There's been decisions that you could argue against, but I don't think you can point to many in the last 4 or 5 years and say, categorically, that was wrong. And I think, that the FPL should be proud of that, because I think they've done a good job with doing that. And the fantasy assist is not necessarily something I agree with. It's there to introduce more points to the game. It would be cleaner and easier and save a lot of hassle if we just use Opto Assist, but we'd have fewer points and a lot less to talk about. So I can understand why it's there.
So the Watkins
fun.
one, was the Watkins one because he intended to pass it?
Yeah, it's so clear. He's clearly intending to head across the goal. And Davis may not have been the intended target, but arguably could have been. Watkins could have been aware that Davis was the player in the area that he was heading back across to. We don't know that, right? What we do know is he was heading it across the box in the region of the 6-yard box to a teammate, hopefully in that area. And when the goal was scored, the ball was still in that area. It was still in the 6-yard box in a central area. It has to be for the goal to be scored. So the intended destination of the header across the goal was where the ball still was when the goal was scored. Therefore, it's an assist. What? It was good play from Watkins. It was a great header back across goal. The commentator said it. Villa fans would have said it. Would have said Watkins did well for that goal. So why would he not get the assist? It works within the rules of the fantasy assist. Was there an intended destination or an intended target? Yeah, I think there was. Did the touch from the defender take it away from that? No, I don't think it did. It's an assist. So there's not even any doubt in my mind that was an assist. I can understand why people argue it, but it's because the rules perhaps aren't as clear as they should be. And I wrote articles for the Premier League trying to explain them the best I can. And I go on Twitter now to try and explain it the best I can. I think hopefully I help a bit, diffuse it, but there's always going to be people who don't agree. And I totally get it. But this particular decision, I don't think it was even contentious. I think it's clear.
Okay.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, so let's get on to some FPL questions for the next few game weeks. So you've got a couple of questions together. The first one's from @BrookieBoy1970. Which teams and players will you be targeting for the run-in, and which player or players do you regret not owning this season?
I regret not owning this season is quite tough, because I've kind of reacted as quickly as I could to players in form. So I got on Gundogan early, Lingard, Iheanacho. So I guess I think, like I said earlier, not getting on the Son and Kane double act. I didn't get on that early enough. I haven't had it long enough. I didn't quite believe in it. I didn't quite register just how long they would keep that up in the early season. Obviously, it's dropped off a bit. So I think it wasn't one player there. It was the two. I had one of them. I had Kane most of the time, but I never paired him with Son enough. So I missed out a lot of points because of that. Certainly that Southampton game was agony to watch.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have either of them, and it was like, what is going on here? It's absolutely crazy, the second half. So that, looking back, I mean, towards the end of the season, I mean, obviously we're all waiting, Ben Crellin included, for this announcement on the double game weeks. So that is going to shape our strategy and my strategy a lot in the next couple of weeks. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. So Rob, what you're showing there is a graphic of. I think Ben has said he's 70% sure that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think you kind of you're believing in this as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm fairly confident. I mean, it makes sense as long as I think it's primarily down to the developers behind the game being able to move the deadlines to that extent, because it's a lot of deadline moves.
Do you think there's facility to do that, Mark, with your kind of knowledge of FPL and stuff?
Yeah, they can certainly move deadlines to accommodate fixture changes. It's I mean, first and foremost, the fixtures will come first, right? So the Premier League will make decisions on the fixtures according to what's best for the Premier League teams, and FPL will have to fit in around that. They have got the ability to change deadlines. It won't be the first option. They will try and keep as many deadlines set as they can, but in order to make the game better, they will move deadlines. Yeah. So if they think it's the best decision, they will do it. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Ben's approach as well. I mean, we showed it in Blackbox last week as well. I think I was prepared to kind of endorse it and get behind it and do some analysis of this as well. So I think he's likely to be very, very close to the final result here. And I think my assessment of what's left is, for me, it's got to be about motivation of the teams and my assessment of that. And you touched on it, Rob, when you said about United turned up at Ellen Road and just wanted to get out without any injuries. And I think that's absolutely true. And I think you look at United and you think, well, okay, they've got second place in the bag. I don't think they're going to lose that. Their focus is winning the Europa League and holding on to second place. And I think the Europa League, as we go, will suddenly become more of the priority. So I am reluctant to invest in United players because of that. And I think we saw a bit of it at Ellen Road. I don't think there was the hunger there they had some weeks ago when they were, getting in the position they're in now. So that is why, the question on Bruno will come up. And the reason why I didn't necessarily jump on Greenwood straight away is because I worry about rotation. I worry about motivation in the league over the last few games, because I think the Europa League, I see them progressing and I see them putting the priorities in that competition.
Yeah.
Similar, of course, to Arsenal, perhaps to a lesser degree, but certainly I think it's going to be a factor.
Well,
for me,
I mean, as a United fan, I think for Solskjaer, like to kind of justify himself still as the United manager. I mean, we've the guys had a lot of stick this season. Like when United went through they had a couple of bad patches this season. Like there was the one at the start of the season which started with the big loss to Spurs, and that was on the back of like losing to Palace as well. And yeah, he's just had his stick, and then like he got himself into a good position after Christmas. Like we'd won like 12, 13 games on the trot or something ridiculous, and then we went on a little bit of a barren spell where lost to Sheffield United, lost to a couple of other teams as well, and you were just like people. Obviously, you got the Ollie out brigade on social media, want rid of him, don't think he's good enough, and I think the Europa League for him is being able to justify himself. I am the Man United manager. I will win trophies. Give me a chance, because it has taken a lot of rebuilding, and I think what he's done at United in the sort of 18 months to 2 years that he's been there, like the transformation in the way they go about their football, it's not great times, and they do get caught out by the smaller clubs still. Like they seem to dominate the bigger teams that will attack them because of that counter-attacking style of play. But he's on the right tracks. They're second in the league. They're at the end of the day, and they're miles ahead of third.
So I think their motivation in league matches could be brought into question, and whether or not that comes true, maybe Fernandes, Greenwood, Rashford, they fly in the league games that remain. But I think there's enough doubt there to make me think there's better, there's better sources of motivation elsewhere. I look at Liverpool, who are obviously trying to get in the top 4, Spurs, who are trying to get in the top 4. Neither of those teams have any other distractions. So for them, the remaining league games are the be all and end all, and they've both got decent fixtures over the run-in. So I'm definitely going to keep stock in those two teams. And I look at, although Leeds don't have anything to play for them, this has been a fantastic season. And also Bielsa is a man of, I think, of great integrity, who will keep his team playing to the highest level right to the very end. Plus, they're going to have the fans back at the end as well. And their fixtures are strong. So I've kept Dallas and Rafinha with that in mind, with the running in mind. And I think they're going to finish strongly. I'll probably go back in for Bamford. So for me, Leeds, Spurs and Liverpool are teams that I'm staying invested in. And I also look at Everton's double game week. They're another team with no distractions and still European places to fight for. And their double game week is West Ham and Villa. And they've got Villa at home in 34 as well. I've held on to Calvert-Lewin with that in mind. You look at Calvert-Lewin, they've got Sheffield United in 36 and Wolves at home 37. Those are good fixtures as well. They've not been great at home. So if you think that's going to continue, fair enough. But I do think at least one Everton player, ideally Calvert-Lewin, is a decent bet for the run-in. Or Dina perhaps at the back, or maybe both. So motivation and lack of distraction are the factors that are governing my choice of which teams to invest in. So I would say Everton, Spurs, Liverpool and Leeds are the teams that I'm looking at. And obviously fixtures plays a part as well.
So based on how Ben thinks the run-in is going to be for the double game week, would you say Everton and Chelsea really are the only two teams that you think, based on if this is going to go ahead, those are the two teams that you're going to kind of focus on?
Probably not going to touch Chelsea because they've got Champions League still a factor and the rotation is heavy. I'm obviously going to keep Rudiger and Mendy. I'm going to get rid of Alonso probably. I think Alonso has a good chance of playing against Fulham, and I think that's a good fixture for him. I don't see Chilwell playing 4 in a row, right? He played at West Ham. He's going to play the first leg. He's going to play the second leg. So if he's going to play against Fulham, that's 4 matches in a row. If you look at Tuchel's rotation, there's a very good chance Alonso starts against Fulham, I would say. So I'm going to keep him for that one. Then Alonso will go in the double game week, probably, because he's not going to get both games. He might not even get one game. So I think Alonso will probably go. So I will go down to 2 Chelsea. Holding Rudiger and Mendy is straightforward, right? I've got Sanchez as my backup keeper, and Rudiger's so cheap and he plays most games. So you're going to hold on to him. But I wouldn't invest in an attacker. Mount is probably the best bet, but there's that distraction of European football. Yes, they're going for top 4 as well, but I don't yet trust Tuchel's rotation in attacking areas. I think I can read it better in defence. I think in attacking areas it's very tricky because he's got far more options and configurations. So I'm not going to go at their attack. But yeah, Everton, I mean, Calvert-Lewin I'm holding. And if you don't have Calvert-Lewin, then I think he's definitely a one worth investing in, because you get the 2 fixtures and then you get Sheffield United and Wolves at home in the 2 that follow. So for me, with a top 4 place still a possibility for them, and Ancelotti being like Bielsa, a manager I think will keep his team performing at the highest level. He won't let them get out on the golf course mentally early on. I think he'll want them to be playing at their very best. Whether or not he can get that out of them remains to be seen. They've been inconsistent, but I think they're worth backing. I think with either Dina or Calvert-Lewin, you can back them and hope to get something in that double and the fixtures that follow.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Rob, is there anyone that you're looking at? Because I'm looking at this and I'm a bit concerned because I've got 3 Leicester. So I think I'll be good for the double where I've got 3 Leicester and
it's the worrying week after.
So it's the week after, the blank after. I've got 6 players that play in the double game week that blank the following week, and I'm looking at going, oh fuck.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, for me, Everton, yeah, like Mark said, there's the double game week, which, like we can see by my FDR, that it's the best looking double game week out of them all. And then they've got Sheffield United. They've after that, then they've got Wolves, who, like, we've just seen them get absolutely demolished by, like, possibly the least attacking team in Burnley. And yeah, I mean, Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison is another name. Like he's had that nice little run of form over the last couple of months. Chelsea, I do worry about. Europe and their aspirations elsewhere. The other thing positive of Everton and this integrity of Ancelotti. We spoke about it maybe a month or so ago about this project that Everton have got, and like they've recently had the new ground approved and all of this. For them, any type of European football next season is a big thing for them, because it's that next step along the way on their journey to being part of. I mean, it's very much like yourselves with West Ham. You've got the ground, now you need the European football. And like if someone said to you at the beginning of the season, you've got the Europa League in the bag next year, which I think you more or less. I think you'll be playing Europa League football next season at West Ham, and like barring an absolute disaster. And I think it's the same for Everton. Like it's that stepping stone. And I really think Ancelotti will go for it. I mean, we haven't really spoken about West Ham. They might not have the double game week, but they've got a nice run of fixtures going in to the end of the season as well. Burnley away, Everton at home, Brighton away, West Brom away, Southampton at home.
Jesse's going nowhere for me, I'll tell you.
No, same.
No, I think there'll be occasions like game week 37 against West Brom. For those that are wanting to make that final stand in their mini leagues, Jesse Lingard's a captain option. If you really want to go, right, I've got 2 game weeks to make up 20 points on the mini league leader. Jesse Lingard could be the person that can half the deficit for you.
And you look at Rafinha as well. That's one of the reasons why I've held on to him. He's got Southampton away in 37 and West Brom at home in 38. But that's West Brom at home with Ellen Road full of fans. Well, with some fans, right? So that's a big fixture for Leeds. So I think Rafinha's going to have a couple of decent weeks as well. So the way I look at how I plan for the rest of the season is I'm going to try and push in the final few game weeks. If I'm not where I want to be with 2 or 3 game weeks to go, I will make some riskier decisions with the captaincy, I think.
The worry that I've got, so I really want to get Calvert-Lewin for 35, but I've got Vardy, Kane and Iheanacho. Now, in 35, Leicester have got a double and Tottenham have got Leeds. Do I lose Kane for DCL that week? Or do I just go without DCL? It's a tough decision.
Well, the thing is, though, Vardy and Iheanacho they have a blank, right, in 36. So
in 36, but for 35, I want to keep them though, right? For the double, no, you want to lose one of them for DCL.
If you're going double, well, you're gaining a fixture, aren't you? Still, if you go Vardy to DCL or Iheanacho to DCL, you're still gaining a fixture. You're gaining that Sheffield United at home fixture.
I can lose one of them in 36, though, right?
On top of,
you could.
Like Leicester are going, like they've got Newcastle at home, and then they've got to go to Old Trafford. And we've said United might take their foot off the gas, and they're not going to roll over and let Vardy and Iheanacho run all over them at Old Trafford. Like the back four at United very rarely gets rotated. It's the midfield and the forward line that gets rotated. And that back four, it will have Harry Maguire in it because he starts every game. I think he's missed 1 game in the 2 seasons he's been there. So it will have Harry Maguire in it, and it will have either Lindelof or Bailly. So we'll say another good centre half alongside.
No, I would lose one of them for 36. I was more thinking about 35.
I'd 35 personally. I wouldn't have I'd happily move on one of Vardy or Iheanacho if I was getting DCL instead.
And the thing is as well, Leicester can win and win well, and Vardy doesn't necessarily have to return these days.
Yeah,
whereas
that's true.
in previous seasons, it's like, well, if Leicester win the game, Vardy gets something. Well, we've seen tonight that isn't the case, right? And we've seen it quite consistently that Iheanacho is actually a better bet in terms of returns when Leicester win at the moment. So, for Iheanacho and Vardy to return, Leicester would have to go to Old Trafford and probably get 2 to 3 goals, probably.
Yeah.
Right? Is that going to happen? I
don't
necessarily see it. They might do that at home to Newcastle, but yeah, I don't know. Newcastle are a much improved team now, so that's not the easy fixture it was. So
Newcastle, even though they've picked up a couple of good results, they're still fighting for their lives down there.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I mean, what can you do with the money that Vardy to Calvert-Lewin will give you a few million as well, right? So that might give you options. So it would come down to that for me. I think it's not an easy call for sure.
Right, we've got a couple of questions on chips. First one's from Mia Kaslakar. Which one has a greater upside, a free hit in a double game week or a blank game week, presumably 35 and 36 respectively?
Yeah, I guess this depends on how well you're set up for the double when it's announced. If you've got 6 or 7 double game week players, then I'd say that you don't need to free hit. Then you can play it in 36. So what you could do then is you can add to that. You could hopefully roll your transfer in 34, maybe bring in 2 more players for 35, go up to like 8, 9, 10 double game week players, and you wouldn't have to care about what you're carrying into 36 because you've got the free hit. If, however, you look at the fixtures when they're announced and you've only got 2 or 3 or 4 maybe double game week players, and you feel that that's behind the curve, if you like, that's lower than everybody else will have around you in your rank or your mini league, then there is merit for using the free hit there, because you can go to town then on the double. So really does depend on when these fixtures are announced, where you stand. I think if I had 6 or 7 double game week players and I could add a couple more, I think 9 is probably enough. I wouldn't free hit to get 11. If I only had 2 or 3, I would probably free hit to get the maximum. So yeah, it really depends on that. It depends on the fixtures, and it depends how your team is set up for those fixtures, and also where you are. I mean, it's like I think if I had the free hit now, and like I said, I had 5 or 6 double game week players, I'd just use transfers to boost that up to 7 or 8, and then free hit in 36. Because you can go for riskier players. Then you could go for you could keep Fernandes and you could get Greenwood in, and knowing that other managers, because of the blank, wouldn't do that. So you can make some decisions that the free hit allows you to make. So I do that depending on how many double game week players I had.
Okay, and the next one's from James Nelson. If you had a wild card left, would you use this week to make the most of it, or alternatively dead end a team into 35 doubles by bringing in left field picks such as Zaha and then wild card in 36?
So this is presuming that we'd know what those fixtures are. Say if we know this week, would I play it this week? Or would I dead end into it? I guess, again, it's going to depend on how many players you're going to have going into 35 without it. Personally, I would use it. I think that, I think you've got to ask yourself, like, what players would you get? What benefit would you get by rolling it and dead ending into 35? You're not going to take hits, are you? You're not going to spend points when you've got your wild card in your pocket. You might take 1 hit to get a left field choice, but I don't see a massive gain from that. Particularly when a lot of us are going to have double game week players without even trying. Like, those fixtures there mean that most people will have at least 5 or 6 double game week players, I think. So I don't think there's a benefit of trying to dead end into it. I don't think, unless you've got 2 free transfers, that's not going to be effective. So I think, I would wild card and try and get a few differentials in that others who don't have the wild card would get in. When obviously you can wild card and maximise on Everton, for example, I'd get Dino and Calvert-Lewin, who don't have a blank, have good fixtures in 35, and have decent fixtures to follow. So I don't think many are going to go into 35 with Dino and Calvert-Lewin without spending points or using a wild card. So that's already an advantage. So I personally would play it and try and get an advantage like that rather than dead ending.
Okay, and then another question that you guys we've spoken about this evening and not sure what to do. So it's from Ahmed Nashra and FPL commentator. What to do with Bruno? Is it wise to sell him for Son? What's both of your thoughts, I guess?
Do you want to go on this first, Rob? You're the fan. You're the United fan.
I love Bruno to bits. He's been a great asset for the season. I'll probably speak for most of the FPL community, and that, like, as an FPL asset, he's just been gold dust for the best part of 12 to 14 months. But I think with the way that United played at the weekend, and there has been a few telltale signs over the last few weeks. It's time to say goodbye, farewell till next season, or
do you want to sing the song, Rob?
Maybe just till game week 37. We'll see. But yeah, as we discussed a short while ago, I think the Europa League is a huge priority now for United. Like, second place is in the bag. We can't catch City and try and win the league. And I don't think his minutes are going to be managed. I just think the intensity of the team won't allow him to return. Like he could still return. I still think he starts every game. So there's that argument to say, yeah, keep him in, because I don't think I think he's the type of player that he gets more energy by playing more. Like he does, that stops him from getting tired. He just keeps going, keeps going. But yeah, I think it's a good time because I did get rid of Son last week, and I knew that I wanted to bring Son back in for this week. And yeah, the fixture against Sheffield United with Spurs, you can't take much away from the cup final on Sunday afternoon. It was very one-sided, and Spurs were pegged back a lot. But I mean, City was brilliant. They turned up, they got the job done. It should have been 3 or 4-0. But I think we saw signs last week of Spurs just sort of finding their way a bit as more of an attacking force, and like having those shackles loosened a bit. And I think with a week with Ryan Mason and this new coaching team, maybe trying to encourage Son, Lucas, Kane, Bale, Dele Alli. Like if they can get Dele Alli playing to his ability, Son and Kane are going to they'll run away with points towards the end of the season. So yeah, I feel like it's the right time to go Bruno to Son, but always keeping in mind that the last two games for United, Fulham at home, Wolves away, with fans in the grounds, like that Wolves away game, that Fulham home game. That'll be a big moment at Old Trafford, especially because Bruno only played a couple of games in front of fans, and he's loved by everyone that follows the club. And he's become this like figurehead. He's been tipped like alongside the names like Cantona and stuff like this, that the way he's come in and influenced the side. And I think that game could be a big moment for him as a United player. So I am keeping half an eye on 37.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do it. It always was the plan, and I think I want to stick to that. I think going into the Sheffield United game with Kane and Son will give me a bit of an advantage. And I was wary that a lot of people sold at least Kane this week for Vardy, and some actually got rid of Son and Kane to maximise their 11 for this week. I chose to hold on to Kane. I always was going to sell Son, so that convinced me I needed to hold Kane to at least give me the chance to have 2 Spurs players going to Sheffield United. So I'm going to do that, I think. I find Spurs hard to call. You know, I think there's a lot of emotion at the club at the moment, and Son is personifying that, showing it. And so that worries me a bit. I don't know what I'm going to get from Spurs for the run-in. I know that there's still a top 4 place available to them. I don't think they're going to make it, but I want to get a European spot for sure. So I'm worried that it's all a bit raw at Spurs at the moment. It could go either way. But I know for sure that United, it's like you said it perfectly there. It's urgency, right? I don't think United are a bad team or they're bad players overnight, but I think the urgency in league games won't be there. That, you know, it will be, they'll be playing at 80, 90%. Yeah, they don't need to push it, right? If it's 1-1 with 10 minutes to go, they'll play out a 1-1 draw. They're not going to try and win the game 3 or 4-1. Spurs can't do that, right? Spurs have got to try and win every game. United don't, and just that very fact will mean it will diminish the potential of United's players. And I think we saw it at Ellen Road. I didn't think they played to their fullest potential in that game. They didn't play with the urgency that I would have expected. So Leeds contained them very well, and they're a different team defensively now. But I think that an element of it was United didn't have that appetite that we normally see from them. And I think that could continue. I don't think it's going to continue against Liverpool, because that's a very competitive game always. But I do wonder what we're going to get in the double game week and in the last 2 games with Europa League still there. I anticipate it will still be a factor. So yeah, I'm going to move to Son and hope for the best. But I don't think it's a gimme from Spurs. I don't know what James thinks about Spurs at the moment, but I think it's very, very hard to read what we're going to get from them on the field at the moment, because there's a lot going on off the field, obviously, and Mason, we don't know a lot about what kind of image he's putting that team out in. We don't know what a Ryan Mason team looks like yet. We've got a hint at it, but I don't think we can go off that. So yeah, it's a risk, but I'm willing to back the plan that I had a few weeks back and go with that move.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Spurs, like you touched on it, with Son after the cup final on Sunday afternoon, that image of how distraught he looked. I mean, it's the League Cup, and like we joke about it, but for that Spurs team, I think it's a big moment at the moment where they're obviously, they've come out of Pochettino, they've come out of Mourinho, and they've, like, at one end of it, they were in a Champions League final, and at the other end, they're losing in a League Cup final. And I think there might be this feeling of that was their moment as a team. I think Harry Kane's days at Spurs are numbered. I think he's always been quite clear that he wants to win trophies. He wants to not be just known as a great goal scorer and the England captain and all of this. He wants to be a great goal scorer that won trophies for his club. And I mean, if someone told me, yeah, you're buying Harry Kane for 120 million, yeah, I'd turn around and thank the Glazers very much after this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a big moment for Spurs, and yeah, it's whether have they got that last push to really have a go at the end of this season. I think we'll find out a lot about how they are against Sheffield United, against obviously a team that's got like no pressure on them whatsoever. So yeah,
I think you're right. I think Son's emotion is about the fact that he feels that team breaking up around him. I think there is a bit of that. I think that, you know, I don't want to see Kane leave Spurs. I really don't. I want him to stay, and I almost want Spurs to make the top 4, so he does, there's a chance he does stay. But yeah, I fear you're right, and that he could be moving on. We'll see where he goes. But I don't think it's impossible for them to get 4 wins out of 5 and push up. It could happen, right? And Chelsea have got distraction, and West Ham and Leicester, they could still have a few bad results that allow Spurs in, but I think it's unlikely. But they've still got it all to play for. I think, well, like you say, we'll see what we get against Sheffield United, and that'll be a measure of what we can expect over the last 4.
I think, after that Sheffield United game, if they've smashed it, you've gone, right, here we go. This is going to be a good last few weeks. And if they don't, then you could maybe think about targeting other players through the double game weeks and last couple of game weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Last FPL related question is from Callum at Saucy Sacco 12. Jota fears, and I assume he's basically saying what to do with Jota.
I don't have any fears at all about Jota. I don't.
No?
I mean, I see him getting lots of chances, and he's not taking them at the moment, but he has in the past, right? In the recent past. And I look at the fixtures and I look at his price, and I don't have a problem with holding him. It might be when I get to the double, there's something more attractive, but I don't think that'll be the case. I think for the Southampton at home game, West Brom, Burnley, Palace, these are all games which Liverpool can win by decent margins, and Jota can be in the points. The trouble is Liverpool aren't taking their chances. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, that game at the weekend was just painful to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, they had so many. I mean, I can't explain it. I think they said after the game their conversion rate in home matches this season is something like 3%. That's absolutely crazy.
But there, I saw a stat. So from, I think it was January this year at Anfield, their XG's 14 or 13 point something, and they've scored 4 goals.
Yeah,
That's ridiculous.
You can't explain it. You can't explain it because they got world-class finishers in their team. Mane on his day, world-class finisher. Salah misses chances, but he has. Look at that finisher against Newcastle. Like, not many players can turn and shoot and put that away like he did there, right? So they've got players capable of scoring brilliant goals, and they've got Mane. I would say is a clinical finisher normally. Firmino, okay, he's not. His output has been disappointing, but Jota will come good. I think he has to play. I think he might miss one game over the last few, but I think he'll be used to rotate Firmino and Mane, and I think he'll play most games. And at the price he's at, I don't think he'd be the first player I want out of my team. I think I'm carrying Alonso. I think he's got to go because he's not a certain starter and expensive for me. So I've got other priorities. Now, I'd be surprised if teams out there have got Jota down as the first player they've got to get rid of. I don't think there's enough to point to Jota as that player, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'll be benching. I'll just bench him this week.
I'm benching him this week.
Yeah, I don't. And I think, we said that his price tag. Like you've got a player that can perform. He's got a huge, really high ceiling, and he's playing for they're 7th in the league, but they're still the champions. They're still one of the best teams in the country. And
would you bench Jota or Greenwood this week?
That's tough.
That's a tough decision that I've got.
I've got
Salah.
I'd probably bench Jota because United at home, they're gonna let Liverpool have a lot of the ball. They're gonna hit Liverpool on the counter. Even at home, this is what happened in the first league game and the FA Cup game back in February. And Greenwood, I think in the league game was 0-0, but then in the FA Cup game, Greenwood came out with a goal and assist.
Also, they got the Europa League game Thursday, right? So Cavani starts that probably.
Yeah,
Greenwood might actually get a rest now that Rashford's back.
This ongoing topic is Rashford and his injury that he seems to have carried since the dawn of time. I think seeing Green, because I spoke at length last week about how I didn't think Greenwood would start against Leeds, and then seeing that the front line was moved around and it was actually Cavani that missed out, and Greenwood was still in there. Rashford played up top. I'm actually now thinking, I think that he'd start a very similar lineup against Liverpool. Let them have as much of the ball as they want, and then just be lethal and clinical on the counter. Because I mean, out of all of our United's last few games, the Liverpool game is one that we want to win. It's our biggest rivals. So.
And against the other opponents are going to sit deeper. They're games where Cavani is going to be useful.
Yeah.
Whereas against Liverpool, the pace and transition that Greenwood can give you is going to be more effective. So Greenwood plays, I think. So I would probably bench Jota as well. Yeah.
Okay, last question for you, and this is specifically for you, Mark. This is from @FPL_banger. How's the robotic Hoover working out for you, Mark? My wife has been on my case wanting to get one, but I just don't trust them.
Yeah, well, it's not something that I have to worry about now because I'm in my own space now. I'm not in the lounge anymore, so I don't have to worry about because by now, looking at the time, it would have gone off by now, and it would have been a problem. I've had to have got up and turned it off. So a little tip with these, we went for a cheaper one. We went for one that doesn't map out the room and learn. I wanted to get the proper techie one, which, you can plot where it goes and it learns the map as it goes round. And then you can say, right, go to this area only. We just got one that detects as it goes along, and it's a pain in the arse. And so if you're going to get one, spend that little bit more and get a better model that can, because then you can have some fun with it and work out some routes and stuff like that. But generally, don't leave any wires lying around. I've lost about 3 Apple cables since I've got it.
Really?
Yeah, it's a nightmare. And they're not cheap, they're 20 odd quid to replace. So to be honest, it's been a bit of a curse because we got the cheaper one, and we called it Vernon. We've given it a name to make us more affectionate towards it. But to be honest, when it's coming on late at night and it's drowning out what I'm doing, what I'm watching on TV or what I'm doing on the podcast or stream and stuff, it's a pain. So yeah, I'm not that enamored with it, and I'm glad it's not a problem for me at the moment. So buy one, but spend a bit more.
Fair enough. Before we wrap up, do you guys want to quickly talk about what you're thinking about captaincy for this week and your plans? So I know both of you said Bruno to Son. Is that is that part of a double move or just a single move?
No, and that's just a single move. I've got a good bench. I mean, I'll have Jota and Dallas on the bench who arguably could play. So my bench would probably be holding Jota and Dallas. And I want to get Dallas in there. Rafinha probably won't make it, I would say. I hope he does, because I think Brighton could be a good game for him. So Dallas will come in for Rafinha if Rafinha is injured. I think that's my first sub. I think he'll get Kane captain. Yeah, it's got to be. I just think Sheffield United have got they've had defensive problems in the centre of that defence all season. I think they'll sit deep. So I don't think Kane will need to be in midfield helping things out there. He was very deep against City, obviously, because even getting possession was something that he needed to affect. That won't be the case against Sheffield United. Spurs will have the ball, and it'll be about how often they can break Sheffield United down. And I think with the problems that the injuries they've had to that centre defence, I think Klein will get chances. He scored at Bramwell Lane, didn't he? Scored a good goal there. So I think he'll return. How heavily, I don't know, but it's enough to put the captaincy on. Obviously, Nacho is.
I was just about to say, you're not tempted with Nacho
right?
against Southampton, because I am.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be, right, because Leicester have got the motivation. They've got a player who's kind of Lingard form, who's doing ridiculous things. So Nacho's, is he a differential? Probably not, but everyone will be on Kane, I imagine. The majority will be on Kane. So if you're trying to push it, you go for Iheanacho. But for me, I think Kane returns. Kane is more certain to return, but Iheanacho could outscore him. So it could be another scenario like this week where Kane comes in with an 8-pointer and Iheanacho comes in with 2 goals or a goal and an assist. Personally, I'm going to stick with. I've had a sensible approach to the captaincies the last few, and it's done okay for me. I've not done spectacularly well, but I've got returns. So my plan is to stick with the no-think option, which is Kane, and then push in the last 2 or 3 game weeks where I think the differentials are really strong. So that's what I'm going to stick to.
Rob, same approach?
Yeah, so like I said, Bruno to Son, Kane captain. I also think he's tends to be the sort of like where Sheffield United will try and sit back and let Spurs. He's not scared to hit the ball from 25 yards, and he can hit it from 25 yards, and we've seen it time and time again, and something like that can really open the game up, which then opens it up for Son to come in, and I actually think like Son could be a nice little differential captain if you fancy like if you've got the two of them, why not stick it on Son? I mean, I'm not personally doing it, but I can't argue against it. The same with Iheanacho as well. So I'm pretty confident that will be my move. I'll probably do it tonight, just to get it done and locked in. Nothing from the weekend and from the cup final told me that this injury for Kane is going to be a lasting problem. So he played. I think he played the whole game. So it's like I think originally it was a case of we'll see if he gets past 60 minutes, 70 minutes, and then he was still running around and trying to get the ball off City in the 93rd minute, and so completely confident with that.
I'm probably rolling going without Son, and either captaining Kane or Nacho. I can't afford Son. I would have gone Greenwood to Son, but I'm 0.1 off. So unless he drops down in price, which he probably won't, I will just go without Son and Kane or Nacho. I'm not sure at the moment. So I don't know.
Take it one gamble too far.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've got to. I'm in quite a few like last man standing leagues where it's like the team with the lowest amount of points gets knocked out, and I just feel like it's one of those game weeks that if Kane can go off and they're playing the worst defense in the league, and I go someone else, it's just gonna knock me out of everything. So I think it's better to go safe.
There's the effective ownership playing its part in your decision making.
Indeed. Right, that's a wrap, guys. It is a longer podcast than we normally do. Thanks for tuning in, and Mark, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No worries. It's a pleasure to chat to you both, and thanks for the opportunity to talk FPL as always.
Do you want to tell people where they can find you on social media and watch your content? And feel free to plug anything that you want to plug as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Twitter at FF Scout _ is my Twitter handle. Obviously the YouTube channel is FPL Blackbox. So go and look us up if you haven't seen the show before. We'll be live on Thursday this week. Az is on the FPL show this week, and he's coming straight from the show to do Blackbox. So that'll be interesting. So hopefully we'll go out at 9 on Thursday, but we're hopefully we'll be moving to Wednesday soon enough, because I don't really want to clash with Mode and Luke, Mode and Irons rather, with Champman, because we like to watch that ourselves. So we're going to try and move to Wednesday soon, but at the moment we're still on Thursday. And look out for FFS Fest as well, because it's something that we're growing. We'll get more out on the channel very soon. So it's at FF_Fest is the Twitter handle. Follow us on that for the latest news of what's going on with that. We've got more news and announcements coming soon from that. So keep tuned to it.
Great stuff. And if anyone thinks they know anyone for the FPL Blackbox apprentice, they can email you as well, right?
Yeah, send us your next door neighbour, your uncle, your dad, your girlfriend. Well, don't literally send us your girlfriend. That's a bit dark, but,
some people might want to after a year in lockdown.
Maybe. Fantastic. Right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Any feedback is really important to us. You can find us on Twitter at FPL_Happy Hour. We're also on a number of podcasts, including Spotify and Google Podcasts, and our YouTube channel, FPL Happy Hour. Please like, subscribe, and share, and all your retweets are really appreciated. We are live streaming at about 10:45 on Thursday after FPL Champman. We'll go through our 5v5 from last week and our 5v5 for this week, and then kind of cover any other questions that we've got as well. So until then, have a great game week, and may your arrows be green, hopefully.
Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
Cheers all.